Peeking behind the curtain, finding Windows Defender antivirus exclusions. This is an article that I saw pop up on Twitter just a bit ago, and I thought it was pretty neat, and I wanted to share it with you. Kudos and credit where credit is due. This is put together by a group of security folks, Friends and Security, and they've got a little table of contents here. I'm going to skip over the TLDR because I'd like to showcase it, and let's get right into the introduction. They say, recently, we raised an issue on X regarding how low-privileged users can access exclusion paths set in the Microsoft Defender antivirus through the Windows event logs. So if you're not familiar, I've got a Windows 11 virtual machine set up so that we can follow along. But look, the antivirus exclusions, things that come from malware, what hackers, threat actors, adversaries, or penetration testers might end up looking for are the small little spots on your file system where if there are any exclusions set, antivirus engines won't scan them. These are set in Windows Defender by default in the virus and threat protection settings. If you move into the more settings for real-time protection, etc., exclusions down at the bottom here will let you add or remove exclusions. You will need administrator capability to do this, so I'll click yes on that user account control pop-up, but if I were to add an exclusion, we can just add a folder for my current desktop, right? We'll go ahead and choose that C users, and I am running as a local admin account, but not always going to be in a high privilege and high integrity process. So for the moment, that username is called local admin, but please take that with a grain of salt. Let's enter that, now it is added, but the thing is, you wouldn't normally be able to see that in just a regular prompt, a regular medium integrity process. Let me open up PowerShell, right? I'll open up the terminal, and let's say I wanted to get MP preference, and that will give me all of the details about our managed protection, antivirus, and everything here. That will dump out all the stuff, but if I wanted to drill down into that, actually look for specific exclusion information, I can tab through this exclusion extension, exclusion IP address, exclusion path, exclusion process. Let's take a look at the exclusion paths to see if it would find that desktop entry that I added. Well, you have to be an administrator to be able to view the exclusions. Right now, I'm just running as a regular Joe Schmo account. I would need to open this up with high privileges, Control-Shift-Enter when I open that process, clicking yes on our user account control, get MP preference, exclusion path, and now I could hit enter on that, and you'd be able to see what I've just entered. But you do need admin privileges to be able to do that. What Friends and Security is saying, and they had some time ago, is that, look, you could actually track this down in the Windows event log, and you don't need to be an admin to do that. We could see that in action. If I were to open up the event viewer, we could go ahead and explore inside of the application and services logs. That'll take a little bit to unfold. It just takes a couple seconds to load whatever it needs to for all those records and resources there. In the Microsoft folder, drilling down into Windows, we could actually go take a look at Windows Defender. In the operational log, you'll have a ton of stuff. And interestingly enough, the event IDs 5007 will show you some of the changes to your Microsoft Defender antivirus. However, this is for any change to Defender's configuration. So you could get a whole lot of insight in here. Like, hey, new value being set for an exclusion. You can see that being modified in HKLM, the registry key for the local machine. Again, needs admin privileges to be able to read that registry key, but the event viewer will still tell it for low privilege users. But there's a lot of stuff in here, like 5007 could really just be any specific notification configuration change. Like here is a setting the product app path. Here is one changing how the service starts, whether it's done running a scan. Oh, that's a different event ID. That's 1001. But anyway, you get the gist. 5007 is going to be a whole lot of stuff that could very well be anything and not strictly whether or not a folder or location is part of antivirus exclusions. So that is one tidbit, but this article showcases just a little bit more. This was highlighted by security researcher Hai Vaknin. I'm sorry, I'm awful at names. And they demonstrated these event logs will actually offer this insight to low privilege users. So maybe malware, maybe hackers could still go find those places, those spots where they could use to deploy a payload or do whatever they might do for other nefarious reasons. But they actually want to showcase a new method that allows users to determine exclusion paths without relying on the Windows Event Viewer and without those logs, and without requiring admin privileges. The gimmick here is that this uses mpcmd-run.exe, the binary, like the command line tool of Microsoft Defender. And they put up a cool little utility to be able to automate that process, but let's see how it's done. They use mpcmd-run.exe to identify exclusions. And by the way, mpcmd.run is in your program files. So back in our virtual machine, what we could do is actually get into our terminal just as a low privilege user. And if we wanted to, we could go take a look at our environment variables for program files. And they do have that directory here, Windows Defender. Granted, it does have to have a space in there. So when I tab to autocomplete, it removes the environment variable, which is annoying me because I like that flexibility, but whatever. mpcmd-run.exe is what we're looking for. And of course, that's there. If we wanted to invoke it in PowerShell because it's a string, we can do an ampersand prefix, and that will give us all of the options for mpcmd-run or Windows Defender running it as a binary here. There's a lot of good stuff, but you might have noticed just at the very, very bottom, there already is just one little flag, switch an argument to say check exclusion based off of a path. So, I mean, what's to stop us from just doing that? Try to check exclusion, we'll specify path, and then we can use just that one that we set, C users local admin desktop. When I run this, it says, failed with HR or H result, the error code being hex 8007005. Well, that's silly and stupid. How about just like local admin? Same thing. How about just like users? Same thing. C://, same thing. This is because we do not have access, right? I could actually change this to an entirely different drive, something like the D drive. Same again, don't have access. How about something like a Z drive? That is going to give me a not found. That file or folder is not found as a location. So the issue that we're seeing is, again, access denied as a low privilege user. Obviously, running this with high integrity would probably work just fine. Let me try that just to validate. Terminal, user account control, full screen that, paste in. Let's go to the desktop. Yep, that tells me it is excluded when I'm running as the administrator. But we want to have this capability as a low privilege user, not the administrator. So they describe that using this with the syntax running mpcmd.run with a scan and a scan type being 3, that refers to a custom scan, including a file with whatever folder or path that you want to check, ending with a vertical pipe and then an asterisk, they've got a little bit of magic here. And it's cutesy. It says, hey, the pipe is an invalid character in Windows folder names, ensuring that the path specified is not a valid folder or file. The asterisk asks as a wildcard, as it usually does, essentially telling Defender to look for any potential subfolders or files within the specified path. If the folder is excluded, the output will read scanning folder to check was skipped. So let's get to see what command they use to help identify these Defender exclusions. But before we do, please let me tell you about another awesome event coming up and help celebrate the sponsor of today's video, SOC Analyst Appreciation Day. Security Operations Center analysts are too often overworked and underappreciated. They're doing the most impactful cybersecurity work, but they're never in the limelight. So to help celebrate those SOC analyst rock stars, Devo is hosting the 4th annual SOC Analyst Appreciation Day. It's all to pay some long-due kudos to our world SOC analysts and to encourage organizations to improve their job satisfaction and mental well-being. The online event is completely free and open to anyone and everyone. Live on October 16th, it is packed full with career-focused sessions, preventing burnout, secrets to success, day-in-the-life details for analysts and researchers, and so much more. I'll even be speaking on the rapid response efforts during the ConnectWise Screen Connect exploitation. I'd love to see you there. If you are a Security Operations Center analyst, or you're fascinated by the work and you want to become one, you should absolutely tune in to the SOC Analyst Appreciation. It's completely free, and it's a day dedicated to celebrate you and your great efforts. Sign up for the SOC Analyst Appreciation Day on October 16th with my link below in the video description, jh.live/SOC. Huge thanks to Devo for sponsoring this video. All right, now let's see what Friends and Security is cooking up. They have this syntax where they invoke mpcmd run.exe with tac scan to run a scan, tac scan type 3 being a custom scan, and then the file that they specify is whatever folder that you want to look, any path or location, but then ultimately including at the very end here a vertical pipe and then an asterisk. In the explanation of the command below, they note the pipe is an invalid character in Windows folder names. Oh, so those are the characters that you are not allowed to name like a file or a folder with, and it'll give you an error if you try to do that, entering it as a new folder or new text file, whatever. Ensuring that the path specified is not a valid folder or file. Ooh, that's a little bit clever. The asterisk acts as a wildcard, essentially telling Defender to look for any potential subfolders or files within that specified path. If the folder ends up being excluded, then the output will just simply read, scanning that folder was skipped. Now, there is one little idiosyncrasy here. Let's try this. I am just a low privilege user right now. I don't have administrator up in the top title of my PowerShell window, but let me try to use our env program files Windows Defender, and that will ampersand that out, lets you our mpcmd run.exe, where we scan with a scan type being 3 and specify the file being the path that we know is now excluded, right? So that's C users local admin, and we added our exclusion onto our desktop. So fingers crossed this will work here for us. Yeah, okay. And we will need to be sure to add that vertical pipe character and then a star or an asterisk to note the end of that. So fingers crossed, there we go. It tells me scanning that location was skipped. Now, I believe this will pop up a little toast notification, right, from the bottom right of your computer screen where my face is, and that is just from the balloon notification of Windows Defender letting you know, hey, that folder and location was skipped in the scan. I don't think I saw that mentioned in the article, but in High's tweets, kind of walking back in time from his original, hey, notification of this stuff back in May 31st with the Windows event logs, October, kind of find a cool new way to do that with using Defender itself. They do note here that while this works, you get the identifier as to whether or not a folder or path is excluded or not, but it will end up giving you a pop-up and just displaying down below, hey, there are items skipped during the scan if it is going to skip an excluded folder. And I gotta be honest, I was a little bit nerd sniped with this, and I really wanted to see, is there a way that I could programmatically, like within PowerShell or C# or whatever, force do not disturb mode or focus assist or the quiet hours or whatever crap will hide those notifications, like disable the balloon, the toast notification, and I tried to go through a couple different registry keys. I got procmon and was doing all the stuff to look inside of the registry to see what might be there. Turns out it's some weird, wacky, like cloud store binary format file that I don't exactly know all the ins and outs of. I would love if any of you were a little bit interested, but I've some way somehow managed to break something on my VM where it will not give me the pop-up anymore, which is what I intended and what I wanted, but I wanted to be able to tell you how, and now I don't know how, so sorry. I think it must be, okay, the change stamp is where I was seeing a lot of stuff fluctuate that I wasn't able to get right. I'm curious if anyone would be super interested. Loading the reg file doesn't really take effect until the next reboot, so logging in back out, maybe it's not all that worthwhile to see this in action anyway, because if you need to log the user out, like the victim and the target, as you're doing this for a penetration test, bug bounty, whatever, okay, your capability and reliability of that attack vector, it might not be the most valuable. But here's the thing. Because we have added that vertical pipe and star, well, we're making it so that it's going to always fail. And that way, if we were to try to use any other path, like documents, it'll tell me, hey, failed with H result hex 80508. 023, whatever, some at least identifier to let us know, here's a threshold, here's a bit yes or no as to whether or not it's skipped, or it is some logic we can better test in, and that it's not going to be able to scan that because it's a fake file that we're using as an anchor. Now, I know some folks might be thinking, why can't I use like the PowerShell prompt start MP scan to start an antivirus scan if that's really what we're doing is brute forcing different directories trying to scan it but fail? Well, we could still just start a scan just as easily with PowerShell, could we not? Well, yes, you totally can. You can specify a custom scan type, and you can include the scan path to be whatever you'd like, just as we did earlier, C users local admin desktop. And if I were to add that vertical pipe and then another asterisk here, this will error, but not give me a very helpful H result, because when we get to see this error here, this H result is for that is an invalid character in a path. So not extremely helpful. Not going to end up being something that we could use to enumerate across different folders, because it's just properly going to handle that as an invalid character when mpcmd_run.exe did not for us. Trying this with documents, we see the exact same thing. And if you were to use the mpcmd_run check exclusion path, blah, 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 that will tell you the exact same thing typically. Trying the actual start MP scan on the desktop though, with it being skipped, it doesn't really give me a lot of good output. I'm curious if there's still more we could drill down into to figure it out for that command. If the process output, the like flickering blue bar at the top, I wonder if that tells us anything interesting, and if there's another vehicle or vessel to do this with the PowerShell commandlet to try and avoid that pop-up if it displays on your machine, and not have to brute force or manually scan each and every single different directory. But right now, it seems like that's kind of the best option, using this in action. Carrying onward with the article here, they note this is effective because Defender is going to check for exclusions before scanning files in that folder, which is really helpful for tools that need to run repeatedly without actually scanning files. But using the pipe or any other character that is not allowed in a Windows path and the asterisk, that will have Defender first verify if the directory is on the exclusion list. And since that is not a valid file or folder name, it'll end up avoiding actually scanning, even if the folder is not excluded, and it would scan regardless. So they put together this cool tool, Sharp Exclusion Finder in C#. I think it would be sweet to do this in PowerShell, but we can dig into that in just a second, and we can play with this a little bit more, because it would be worthwhile to try and detect this trick, especially if you're doing some of that Security Operations Center Blue Team analyst work. Real big tips for defenders, though. Obviously, don't have antivirus exclusions, you goddamn idiot. Do not do it. I know some software says, hey, you need to have that set up so that it actually installs and configures and runs properly. Here's the solution for you. Don't use that software. Monitor for unusual mpcmd_run.exe usage patterns. This is it. That's what we should probably drill down into. Let's see if we could write some rules to help detect this. But all in all, I think this is neat. I think it's pretty cutesy. Sure, it's got a little bit of nuance, maybe not the most perfect method, but I think maybe there's some opportunity to improve. If anyone wanted to drill down into, oh, could we call a scan from Defender with Win32 API calls so we don't end up having all of the artifacts or process executions on the host? Can this be done without the binary, or can we actually avoid the little pop-up if that displays? Or what else could we do here? Anyway, let's try and use their tool, Sharp Exclusion Finder. Tool designed to find folder exclusions using Windows Defender, the command line mpcmd run as a low privilege user without relying on event logs. And this is it. Not a whole lot to it. Really, you just offer it a base path for what it will search for, include some options, if you'd like, for how far down you want to look, the depth, number of threads that you'll loop through, and an output file if you wanted to save the results. So we can explore the program.cs, actually get an idea of the C# source code, and we can go run this thing. So usual imports, class program ends up just setting up an excluded directories as a hash set, counter to keep track of stuff, directories, max threads, stopwatch, a lot of boilerplate, but the actual main function ends up just checking the arguments, printing out help if it's not there, loop through to set each of these as they should, and then ultimately get excluded folders by tier, passing in the base path. Now, print help is as we would expect, but the get excluded folders by tier will take in the depth, the base path, and everything that it's going to end up looking for. It ends up adding these together, and then at the end of the day, ultimately processing tiered directories, so all the depth capability. Really, I want to go look for the scan directory function. And that's what this is. Ultimately, it just ends up displaying, okay, we process however many directories after we've hit a certain count, but it just builds out the binary, the shell invocation, right? Okay, shelling out to run Defender with mpcmd_run.exe, arguments and path as we'd all expected. The isDirectoryExcluded function just checks everything. Run process does this over and over and over again. So look, it's nothing fancy. It's everything that we would expect. Maybe we could rewrite this if you wanted to copy in Rust, in Golang, running in PowerShell, copy pasta, whatever. But let's get back to our virtual machine where I do have that downloaded and I can run our sharp exclusion finder.exe. Of course, the options and everything should be present there. We can try to run this in just C users local admin. And let's see if it can track down the desktop. Okay, getting a couple access denieds, right? Because we probably don't have all the permissions. Even though we are that user, maybe we need to have UAC and a high integrity shell there. But local admin desktop is excluded. So we track that down by that brute force method. I think if we were to open up like Task Manager or Process Monitor, maybe Process Explorer and sysinternals would just see this smattering of code. Oh, I gotta do it. Let me just see if like sysinternals and Process Explorer would just see a like fire hose of mpcmd run.exe being started over and over and over again. mpcmd run? Yep. I know that's dumb, I know that's stupid, but hey, I mean, that's the technique that is effective here. Obviously, though, this should light up like a Christmas tree for any environment that's actually going to be auditing, monitoring, and doing some of the analysis to detect this stuff. Detect any badness. Hopefully, you'll see a absolute flurry of these processes being started and stopped. But could we detect the actual syntax? We could use Sigma, and maybe Aurora as an example, with a light EDR capability and write a detection rule for this. So let me close out of Process Explorer. Let's sharp exclusion finder close out of here, and let's get to actually use Aurora. Now I do have that staged and set up here. Aurora is actually going to have a lot of the rules that we might use. Aurora will store its Sigma rules in the signatures folder and then Sigma rules. I have gone ahead and removed all of them just so that, hey, I don't want it to run any of the other stock off-the-shelf typical Sigma rules. I only want to run mine. So what we could do is actually move up to the custom signatures capability where we do have Sigma rules and a process creation.yml template. So something that we could use to have a jumping off point to write our own Sigma rules. So let me open up Sublime Text. Let me open up this template file and let me try to save a copy just as process creation, maybe Windows, Defender exclusions, brute force.yml. Cool. Okay. So we could say Windows Defender exclusion brute force as our title. We will use a unique ID, just a GUID. I do have the generate GUID capability or that package added to Sublime Text. You can Control-Shift-P and then install a package with package control to get that. But that way I can very, very easily just type in UUID and it'll generate one there for me. Status experimental is fine. Our description can say detects Defender exclusion brute force activity with the mpcmd run.exe binary. We can also put some references here. I think that's good to do, and we'll just add the link for that blog. Log source is fine. This should be process creation on Windows, and we can define our detection capability. So look, first things first, we probably want to be looking for mpcmd run, right? mpcmd run.exe should be what our image ends with. So we can say that is Defender, and we could also specify like the command line should probably contain a scan, noting that with a space and a hyphen to add the flag scan. Oh, and that should be command line, sorry. Maybe that's better called Defender scan. And then we can add another criteria for like an irregular file. Within that, we can check if the command line contains again with that filter. And I think this could probably be made better. So please let me know. I am totally okay with being just a bad little detection engineer by any means. Not my real world, but please let me know how we could improve this in the comments below. I think at the very least, that will detect when we've got a file that includes that irregular structure here with the pipe and the asterisk. So let's make sure that is our condition. We want to use the Defender scan and an irregular file. And critical alert is probably fine because that likely means there are like already threat actors in your environment. So fingers crossed that is set. Added into Aurora, and let me go see if that will work as it should. We do have Aurora in our desktop, so I'll move into that directory, and then I'll want to run the Aurora agent, and I'll do that with the dashboard open. So we'll get that cruising. And will it load that rule? Yes. Okay, cool. So rules loaded is just one here. You can see that where my mouse cursor is. And then I believe we can go see the dashboard. Oh, I always have to check their documentation every single time to remember the port number. 17494. Okie dokie. Let's go there. So with that, we should get the notifications and we'll also get the alerts loaded in this little display. So let me open up a terminal once again. Now, even just as our poor little low privilege user, we can try to run our sharp exclusion finder with C users, local admin, desktop, or just local admin as a starting place because it'll brute force and hammer through all of those to eventually find the desktop. But will our Sigma rule work? No. What the heck? Am I wrong? Oh, there it goes. Okay. I didn't do anything. I just had to wait a little bit. I guess it took some time there. We can see the notifications coming through. Yep. Coming through now. My face in the way. But if I refresh this page, okay, yeah, it's going to start to light up a lot of those coming in because it's just going to be one after the other again and again and again with that utility. Oh, and Aurora looks bloody. All right, so there you have it. A small little technique, a big shout out, big props to Friends in Security and the folks that were digging into that. And I know, look, it might have a little bit of nuance as to whether or not you'll actually use something that is this screaming loud annoying with process invocations over and over and over again when they will be lighting up like a Christmas tree, especially with some process detection capability there. But now you've got some Sigma syntax to be able to look for that. So hopefully a little something for both red and blue with a good video that is still some tradecraft that might be out and about. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please do all those YouTube algorithm things, like, comment, subscribe, and I would love to see if you improve or enhance this at all. Maybe you doing something in another different language, maybe using some of the Win32 API functions to make it stealthy, or maybe finagling with actually disabling, turning on or toggling off, like focus assist, do not disturb in the quiet hours on Windows. That'd be super interesting. But anyway, thanks so much. Hope you check out our sponsor, link in the video description. Seriously, genuinely, along this conversation of Security Operations Center, I hope you turn in to the SOC Analyst Appreciation Day. I'll see you in the next video.